Okay, so this is 3 bones of the appendicular skeletal system, and 2 of the 3 are pectoral girdle. And the pectoral girdle happens to be clavicle and scapula. Remember that the clavicle and scapula, the only place that this whole pectoral girdle is going to articulate with axial skeletal system is the sternoclavicular joint. So this portion of the sternum, this is the sternal end of the clavicle, and you notice how round it is. That articulates with the manubrium of the sternum. Let me say that one more time. The sternoclavicular joint is the only place where appendicular skeletal system, pectoral girdle, articulates with axial skeletal system. We will learn this week that that is a synovial joint. It's a biaxial condyloid joint. Moving on. As far as the clavicle is concerned, it's very simple. All you guys need to know, you don't need to know left from right. You only need to know sternal end and acromial end. How are you going to tell the difference? Sternal end is fat, acromial end is flat. Couldn't be easier. Let's move on. Then we have the scapula. Scapula is a very busy bone. We have a lot of stuff going on with the scapula. And first off, let me say for the record, for all of the bones of the appendicular skeletal system, with the exception of the clavicle and the fibula, you need to be able to tell me whether it's a right or left. You will be responsible for telling me whether it's a right or left, and that will be worth half a point. So if you see this bone on one of the, and you will, on one of the stations, the first question is going to be, this is a R or L what? And you're going to circle left or right, and then you're going to put scapula. So you're going to get a half point for each of those answers. Now, the scapula, this happens to be a left. Now, how are you going to tell that? Well, what you want to do is, if you can't figure it out, you're going to go to one of the skeletons, and you're going to use this as a template. Or the skeleton, rather, as a template to kind of match this up. Okay? Now, what I start with is this. This is the spine of the scapula. And believe it or not, if you were to open somebody up, you were to dissect into this, you wouldn't see, basically 90% of the scapula would be embedded in muscle. All you would see is this little sliver of the spine sticking out here, and you would see the, the axillary, the vertebral, or the medial border of the scapula. Everything else is, you wouldn't. So again, going back, this is the spine. You see this fossa? Everybody see the fossa above the spine? And then we have a fossa below the spine. Well, guess what? This is the supraspinatus fossa, and this is the infraspinatus fossa, respectively. You have a muscle that sits here, we're going to learn, it's called the supraspinatus, and we have one here known as infraspinatus. Those are rotator cuff muscles. That's why it's important you know what these fossas are. This is the acromion process of the scapula. That's the bony part of your shoulder. If you feel your shoulder and it's bony, that bony part is this. Then we have this other funky part of the scapula that sticks out kind of anteriorly, and this is called the coracoid process of the scapula. And that is where an attachment point for biceps brachii muscle, so it is an important structure as well. This is the subscapular fossa here. So if we look at it from the back, if I go through this, underneath the sub, right? So on this side would be subscapular fossa, and your subscapularis muscle, the rotator cuff, originates from that fossa. Lots of surface area there. This is the glenoid fossa, this indentation, that where the head of the humerus sits. Now what you're not seeing is there's a glenoid labrum that sits there that actually makes this fossa a little bit deeper. As you can see, this is very, very shallow, especially if you compare that relative to your acetabulum, which is very, very deep. At any rate, here's the glenoid fossa. You have a little tubercle, a little roughened bump on the top, and you have a tubercle, a little roughened bump on the bottom. Supraglenoid tubercle. The one on the bottom is known as the infraglenoid tubercle. Then you have the different borders of the scapula. Like I said, this is the medial, or what's known as the vertebral border, because the vertebrae, right, are going to be right here, running up and down. This is the armpit area. This is known as the axillary border. This is the inferior and superior border. So borders are easy. You just need to know the different parts. And I think I hit them all. All right, Kai, we stop that?